Welcome to Filmi Ladies. I am Beth. With me is Pitu, and we have an amazing special guest star today. We have Sal from Sal and the Bad Pun on Twitter, because there is nobody I know who is as smart and as funny about women in Indian cinema across the board as Sal. And when we started doing a series on superstars of the past, I was like, I need her to come on every single episode. And you could have come on to join us about Wahida or Tanuja, or not Tanuja, Newton or Nargis or everyone we've talked about, but we saved you up for Suchitra Sen.
My father would be so, for the first time in his life, he'd be proud of me. I'm Bengali, so if the fact that I'm on record about the Mahanaika, he'd be chuffed.
And when I started watching Bengali films, you were certainly one of the people I instantly realized I could talk to about some of these things, because there are just so many fewer people who at least are saying that they watch these things than Hindi films, online generally. So it was great to have all of these conversations, and we wanted to bring her up because obviously she bridges Bengali and Hindi films, and we've each seen kind of a different selection of her filmography. Before we get too far in, I will apologize for terrible pronunciation. If you think I can't pronounce Hindi, just wait till I get on Bengali. I apologize. I'm trying to do better. And fortunately, we have a Bangla speaker here who can help. And we would not do this episode without such a person. But we just really wanted to talk about her because she is such a towering presence in Bengali cinema. But so for Sal and then Pitu, like, how does she land within the landscape of Hindi movies for you of the 50s and 60s?
For me, I think like Suchitra Sen could have been as big as she wanted, in Hindi films. Most of her films were successful. Devdas, she was almost uniformly acclaimed, I think, for that film. Her performance is incredible. Her acting style was, I think, like this really interesting bridge between classic Hollywood cinema and classic sort of Indian cinema. I think when I watch her, I see her, you can tell she's studied, say Garbo and folks like that. She's someone who's really sort of, whose acting style is very measured yet emotional. And she's not someone who's, who didn't take it seriously. This is someone who took acting very, very seriously. And she was an important capital F figure. And when she did do the Hindi films she did, and she was very selective about them because she was very protective of her legacy, they were almost all successful. I think Bombay Ka Babu wasn't, but again, that was because it was a very controversial film. There was, like, I think they say a hint of incest in it. But even that film, has very popular music. She maybe, I think she won the Filmfare maybe for the film she did with Ashok Kumar and Dharmendra, or was nominated. This was back when the Filmfare was a more important, sort of more consequential award. Aandhi, of course, is a major, major film for multiple reasons, because of all the political controversy that it was embroiled in, but also because it's a good film and her performance in it is incredible. And I think if she'd wanted to, she could have done more films. She was considered a great beauty. She was considered a great actress. I think, I've read things that contemporaneous actors and actresses, where they've spoken very highly of her across industries. So it's a little bit of a pity that she didn't do more work in Hindi, because it would have been great if she'd been exposed to a wider audience, like, say, Vaijayanti Mala had been. But still, she's someone who made very definite choices, who didn't allow herself to be shaken from the idea she had in her mind for her career. I think of her very much as sort of like an Indian Katherine Hepburn in that sense, where she was the captain of her craft and the captain of her career. In contrast to Uttam Kumar in certain ways, her male counterpart, Mohanda Mohanaya, because he sort of floundered in Hindi cinema to a certain degree. No, she never had that problem. She
Yeah.
did her films, and when she said she was done, she was done.
Yeah.
She never had that moment of doing films that were lesser than her stature. The stature conversation was a big thing back then, and she
Mm.
never had to deal with that. She controlled her narrative. She went out when she was ready to, and she never came back. She never had that idea of who the Mahanaika was compromised, whether it was in Hindi cinema or in Bengali cinema. So that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of wonderful in its own way, even though the
Yeah.
fact that she didn't do Bollywood films as much is a bit of a loss.
Pichu, how does she kind of fit in your concept of film stars?
So it's interesting because until I was researching for this episode, the only Suchitra Sen movie I'd ever seen was Aandhi. And it was ages ago. I think I saw it on TV in India. And I remember liking it and really liking her in it. But I had no idea who this person was. A, because I was very young when I saw it. And I had no idea who I mean, I knew she was like a big name in Bengali cinema, but except for Ray's films, I don't really watch Bengali films. But when I watched 3 films in preparation for this podcast, I watched Chawa Pawa, Agni Pariksha, which I loved. And I also watched Saptapadi. It's really hard to find Bengali films, by the way, that have subtitles. So these were kind of the only 3 I could see. There were so many times while watching those movies where I was like, why did this woman not do enough Hindi films? Because I would have loved to see these films, because my favorite Hindi heroines of that time, and I don't know to what extent she overlaps from a timeline perspective, are Nargis and my most beloved Wahida Rahman. And I was like, I would love to have seen more of this woman because she's phenomenal. But that was more of an emotional reaction. My other reaction was that I actually have a lot of respect for people who choose to do more regional cinema than doing more Hindi cinema, because they really take their own industry forward. So it's kind of like if she had chosen to do more Hindi cinema, she probably would have had to move from Bengal, and then she probably wouldn't have done as many Bengali films. And I think that she and Uttam Kumar probably contributed so much to the regional film, and you do owe some amount of obligation to your own mother tongue and to take your own regional cinema forward. So you can see it as this is a loss for Hindi speaking audiences. But if you're truly great and if you're truly wonderful, people who have no interest in your brand of cinema will watch you, and that is to your industry's benefit. It's like I've never seen Kannada films ever, but then I saw Kantara and now I want to watch Kannada films. So I have like a mixed perspective, which I thought she was amazing in the 3 films that I did see, and I want to see more of hers.
I mean, you can't talk about Bengali cinema without mentioning her at all. Right. Like if you're talking about anything from the 50s and 60s and even the 70s, you cannot not talk about her or Uttam Kumar, obviously. And you can't talk about either of them without the other, which is, I don't really want to talk about him super much. I want to talk about her, but they are a unit more than maybe any of the other women with their major co-stars that we've talked about so far, because we did manage to not talk about Raj Kapoor a whole lot when we talked about Nargis. I also love that Dev Anand has shown up again. He's shown up in every one of our women superstars of the past episode. So that's where we are in history. He's just always there. So to me, she is this just absolute formidable force of a screen presence. She bowls me over unlike anyone else that I've ever seen. I love the Katherine Hepburn comparison. And in fact, friend of me and friend of podcast, Samit Basu, Bengali writer, when I was first learning about Bengali cinema, would chat with me and tell me, share with me that his mother was a big fan of these films. and he's like, yeah, she's our Katherine Hepburn. And at first I was like, but she never wears trousers. How can she be Katherine Hepburn? And then I was like, oh, I get it. Like literally I've never seen her in pants, I don't think. Maybe once or twice, but a few not saris, but usually saris, right? Like she's so majestic, and I mean, we know the problems with the term strong woman, but she's just this force, and I find her unputdownable when she's on the screen. I'm so engaged with her, and she does lots of movies that have melodrama with faces like this and all sorts of things, but she's just so compelling, and so there's just this reserve in her. I feel like that this reserve of resources that is always coming to the fore. She's always doing something. She's always engaging and super watchable. I just wanted, for people who don't know her filmography very well, we'll just put out that she started acting in 1952. Her first film with Uttam Kumar is the year after that. So that pair happens really fast. That magic gets tapped really fast. She's in the
Which movie was that, Beth?
Sorry, Chotar. I don't know how to pronounce any of these things. It's a comedy, and they're kind of one of the multiple tracks in it. And then, in 1955, she's in the Bimal Roy Devdas, which obviously is a big deal. Not a particular favorite of mine, but there it is. But then she's just, by the late 60s, she's slowing down, and as Sal was talking about, being so selective and really crafting her legacy. And by 1979, she stopped acting and basically is a recluse for the rest of her life, which is also fascinating. And her, major co-star Uttam Kumar is plagued by all sorts of gossip for a long time, is my understanding. And I can imagine that for her, choosing a very different path was important, as she perhaps witnessed some of his goings on. But she's just you can't not talk about her. You can't not look at her. Sal, why don't you talk about some of the films you've seen her in, and if there's any overlap with what Pitu is named, we could start with those maybe.
I mean, I think like Saptapadi, Rina Brown, right? Like,
yeah,
everyone's obsessed. I think if you're Bengali, your parents or your grandparents have spoken to you about Rina Brown. I think now, even people who are not Bengali, if they watched Piku, they know the song.
yeah.
When Deepika sing it in the car. So that, all of that, the motor, they're on the scooter or the motorcycle together singing the song. They have that little trade-off, the tumi bolo, you sing it. Everyone knows it. It's one of those things that you don't not know. They're like Uttam Suchitra, like Raj Kapoor Nargis, except Suchitra is not, she's not this Galatea figure, she's indomitable. No one can craft Suchitra Sen. Suchitra Sen crafted herself.
Yeah.
That's she birthed, it almost feels like, she burst fully formed from the head of cinema, like
Seriously.
She's so that is one. The Shat Pakhi Badha, which I think Kora Kagis is the remake of, maybe.
I don't know.
I'll have to.
Is that movie the one where she plays a nurse?
No.
Okay, because there's
that is the one that Khamoshi is.
Deep
the Vahida movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I watched for today.
That film is, wow. Yeah. So that also interesting bit of trivia. Wahida has said, because she was in the remake with Rajesh Khanna.
Yeah.
She has said that is one performance where she felt like she didn't measure up to. So that's the stature of Suchitra Sen. People were intimidated by her. People were scared of stepping into her shoes. She was an actress's actress, So Shat Pakhi Badha, Devdas, which I, unlike love.
Talk about what you love about that Devdas. I would love to know.
I think, for one, that might be one of my favorite performances by a male actor in a film. Because I always say this about that film. I'm a big defender, apologist of the 2002 Devdas. I consider it one of the great films of the 21st century. But what the 21st century, the Sanjay Leela Bhansali Devdas doesn't have, and Bimal Roy's Devdas has, is a great Devdas. Devdas on paper in Sharat Chandra's novella is a very internal character. There's no external conflict. This, like Hamlet, he is a man who is undone by his failure to act. But he doesn't even get to stab people or deliver monologues or anything. So Uttam Kumar externalized that inability to act. That's like kind of a feat of acting, especially at a time where acting was more stylized, it owed more to theatrical traditions. And Dilip found this kind of a balance between the cerebral and the theatrical. So when I was watching that film, I was like, how is he doing this? How is he externalizing this entirely intellectual conflict? But even the women, though, like both Vajanti Mala, which again, fun story, she refused to accept the Best Supporting Actress award for that film because she said, I am the lead actress of the film. So see, this is why
that is the definition of main character energy, by the way. I will not accept it. Thanks.
How can you not be obsessed with these women?
Right. Right.
With Suchitra Sen in that film, again, it's the Bengali word that we use, obhiman, right? Like that, that pride, that self-respect, that Suchitra Sen personified. There's this anecdote about Suchitra Sen that she refused Raj Kapoor because he came to Kolkata to offer her a film, and he got on his knees and offered her a bouquet of roses. And she was like, that's so undignified. So that's something you see in her performances, and that's something that Parvati, the character, embodies. And Suchitra finds that note and holds it. And to find that note and to hold it without losing the warmth of the character, because this is a woman who goes from this ingenue to the mother of grown children. So to balance that, to not make that cold or purely kind of like imperious or bitter, it's kind of a feat of acting. So yeah, that's another one. I think that's perhaps the film of Suchitra's that most non-Bengalis have seen.
Probably,
yeah, and it's a good one. That's no mean introduction to this legend of Indian cinema.
Wow, you're making me want to rewatch it.
I know. I was just going to say, my dislike of Devdas has made me stay away from any Devdas iteration except for the Shah Rukh Khan, Madhuri, Aishwarya one, because I love Shah Rukh Khan, Madhuri, and Aishwarya, so I had to see it because of my fandom. And I love Dev D. That's the only Devdas iteration I like. You have actually convinced me to go and watch the Devdas. So you have managed to do something, Sal, that no one has ever managed to do. I was like, maybe I'll give it a shot.
This is my favorite parlor trick.
Make people watch Devdas. What do you think of her other Hindi films that you've seen, Sal?
So Mumta is kind of a typical 60s melodrama, mother, turns to sex work, to being a courtesan, really, singing and dancing, which was a veiled allusion to sex work, I think, in those days. Daughter, to bring up the daughter more respectably and so on. The older character is paired opposite Ashok Kumar, the younger character is paired opposite Dharmendra. The film isn't like particularly remarkable. It's a fairly sort of bread and butter 60s melodrama, sort of a lesser kind of Pakistan narrative, but she's very good in it. It's not a particularly challenging role for her. It's not much compared to the kind of things she's done in Bengali. So I believe it's a remake of one of her Bengali. But she does what she has to in it. The other thing to think about with her Hindi films is, I saw a tweet of yours, Beth, where you were like, Bengalis are always talking about how Bengali films were less melodramatic, and they weren't, clearly, you've got to back down there. If you compare them to the Hindi films, the tonality is a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Hindi films are going for something broader. Bengali films are going for something experientially more specific. And that's something, that gets lost in translation with these remakes. The Hindi films are a little bit more bombastic. They invested in providing a little bit more spectacle. Those are not interests that Bengali films had. They're a little bit more interested in the psychological, the quieter, even with the acting being more stylized and all of that, like characteristic of the time. They're a little quieter. So those things lost.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's a really wonderful point. If we have any listeners who haven't dipped their toe into black and white Bengali film, or at least mainstream Bengali film, you definitely should. But that is a really wonderful summary of what is different about them, I would say, because they are, yeah, like when people told me that they weren't as melodramatic, I was like, we're watching different films then, because yes, they absolutely are. But the tone is very different. They're a little, if I say they're smaller scale, it's just because they're not as bombastic. I would totally agree with that. The way the music is beautiful, the songs are beautiful, but they're done in very different ways. Like you don't get big dance productions, hardly ever. The spectacle is much more emotional than visual most of the time. I mean, they're pretty, but they're not.
So I probably am. I only know the one movie, which is Chowa Pawa, which is also Chori Chori. And Chori Chori is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I've seen it like 5 or 6 times, and I did rewatch it for our Nargis episode. And I have to say, I was very disappointed by Chowa Pawa.
Oh, were you? Because
I was.
I
don't
selected
think
that
the
one
movie,
for you.
yeah, no. And I'm not saying that Chowa Pawa was bad or that I didn't enjoy it, but I just didn't care for the characters the way I cared for Kamo. Like, case in point, I know that the name of Nargis's character in Chori Chori is Kamo because I care so much about her. I have no idea what Suchitra's character is called in Chowa Pawa because I didn't care. And I was trying to think about it. I was like, what about this is less appealing to me than Chori Chori? Because I certainly do not like Raj Kapoor in Chori Chori at all. And Uttam Kumar was like amazing. But for me, the Nargis performance was so much more appealing. And I feel like it was because something about Chowa Pawa, and maybe it has to do with what you guys are talking about with the tonality. I wouldn't say that Chori Chori is particularly bombastic or melodramatic, but it has enough emotion in it that I care. For example, I have never been able to watch Rasik Balma, the sad song in Chori Chori, without actually crying along with Nargis. But when Suchitra Sen has the sad song in Chowa Pawa, I was like, okay. Like it just didn't get me in it. And it wasn't for lack of chemistry. I mean, they had sizzling chemistry. The story is the same. I love the story of It Happened One Night. But I was just like, is this it? It felt very flat to me. And I was just like, no, I watched it. It was fine, but it's certainly not a movie I would rewatch. It felt very flat and disappointing in comparison. She was fine, but the movie itself, I was like, why would I watch this again? Whereas Chori Chori, I'll watch it again, sure. So this is a very small comparison because I've only seen the one Hindi and the one Bengali comparison, but to me, it definitely felt flat. And I haven't seen Choti Si Mulaqat, which you said Agni Pariksha is based on, and you said Agni Pariksha is way better, but I loved Agni Pariksha. It had me hooked, and I was just like staring at the screen and wondering what was going to happen next.
Would you do a brief plot summary for people who haven't seen Agni Pariksha?
Me?
Yeah.
Or do you want Sal to do it?
No, you do it.
Can I give away the spoiler though?
What do you think?
I can give away the
60-year-old film?
It's an old movie, I guess. At
Let's
this
do
point,
it. Let's do it.
Okay. So Agni Pariksha is so cool. It was very riveting. I know it's a romantic drama, but it almost felt like investigative to me because it was so cool. There were so many twists and turns in it, and they did it without making it melodramatic and stupid. And every single person in that movie like brought it, like the grandma and the dad and the everybody and the servant and the tangewala. Every single person was like, I'm here to act my ass off. It was awesome. So the story of Agni Pariksha starts with this cute little adorable girl, and she has this mom who's like a little bit mean to her, but she's fine. Her dad is very sweet, and their grandma is really the one who has all the power in that home. And I like that grandma. She was like not scary, but she wielded a lot of power. And I was like, you are scarier than Lalita Pawar because you look so harmless, but you are very shady. And then so shady. And she arranges this little girl's marriage, this 12-year-old's marriage to this person who is like her dead husband's friend's son or whatever. We don't need to get into that. And everyone in the family is horrified. They're like, she's 12-year-old, she's just a child. We want to educate her and make her this like remarkable woman. And now you have like, and they refuse to accept the marriage. They were like, this marriage is bullshit. But her grandmother says to her, it's not bullshit. It is an actual marriage. It did happen in like with the actual rights and everything. So it is a marriage and you have to respect it. And I was like, no, she doesn't. This is bullshit. So I was firmly on the side of the family. And then she grows up, and seemingly for all purposes, this marriage has been ignored. She's not in touch with the guy she was married to and everything. Life is going on and everything. And then one day on a foggy mountain, she meets Uttam Kumar and their romance blooms and they're so cute and beautiful. And I kept posting like screen caps to my Instagram because they were so darling and their outfits were so nice. And they have this wonderful meet cute. And then now she has this moral dilemma because she was like, I love Kirit Mukherjee, but then she's also like, however, I am also married. And no one in her family is going to support her in this, except her older brother is like, you are a married woman. And then she decides that she's going to sacrifice her love to Kirit Mukherjee because she is a married woman, technically. And then in the end, and I was like, oh my God, how are you going to solve this? Like, I want you to ride away into the sunset with Kirit Mukherjee. And then I was like, but I also appreciate and admire your fidelity to the stupid child marriage you had, which like, I wish you didn't, but I respect you for it. Meanwhile, I was cursing her grandmother the whole time. And then in the end, we discovered that Kirit Mukherjee is none other than her child marriage husband. And we're like, wee! And I did not see that coming. I did not, no, but this should not surprise you. It could surprise Sal, because Sal might be like, how stupid is this woman who I have been forced to talk to? But Beth, you should know I'm a dum-dum. I never see anything coming.
Before.
I have seen movies before, but I was like, what is she going to do? I was having an existential crisis. I was like stroking my dog very like vigorously because I was so worried about what was going to happen. And then she made all those faces and I was like, oh no, Suchitra, I was sweating. It was so bad. I had to go pee multiple times because I did not know how they were going to fix this situation. I very much wanted her to be with Kirit Mukherjee. And in the end, we discover he's the husband and they tied everything with a bow. And I was like, I don't know who made this movie, but that person, a genius. So I loved it. I loved it. It was very satisfying.
Sal, what are your thoughts on Agni Pariksha?
Sal, don't say you think I'm stupid. We all know it's true, but don't say it.
I would never. I mean, I feel like I only know that kind of plot because it used to happen a lot in late 19th century, early 20th century women's literature.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Ellen Montgomery, who wrote Anne of Green Gables, and she has like a bunch of stories this happened.
Love it.
So I probably would have had that same moment of like you, but also because one wants to suspend their disbelief and one wants to be surprised, right? But with Uttam Suchitra, this is one of the Uttam Suchitra movies. It's so hard to also pinpoint what makes them so magical together. Like what exactly is the alchemy? I think especially for today's audience, this is not a man who's like all, he doesn't look like Hrithik Roshan or, someone.
He was
like,
seriously hot though. I was like,
when I watch him, like just a close up is enough. He is so sexy.
Yep.
Yes.
Those eyes.
Yeah.
Yes. The smile, his smile.
Oh God, no. I mean, the way he lip syncs. Like it's, oh God. But
he's great.
I don't know if everyone now would get it, but I get it. And with Suchitra Sen as well, I think, she's a beautiful woman. She was considered one of the great beauties of her time. But again, this is not someone who, as Beth pointed out, she's not someone who's, she's not a size 0 and not wearing the very sexy outfits. And in Bengali films, the clothes were even more conservative, even when the girls were playing, these rich kind of sophisticated women, they were dressed pretty conservatively. pretty simply, because that's also Bengali culture in a big way. You know, it's not an ostentatious culture, while Bollywood was, you know, sort of formed more by North Indian influences, Punjabi influences. So it looks a different way. But yeah, when I think of films like Chawa Pawa, the It Happened One Night remake, this one, which is adapted from an Ashapurna Devi novel, I think.
Mhm.
And my roommate loves Ashapurna Devi. She's Tamil, but she grew up reading Bengali novels. She learned Bengali so she could read Ashapurna
Wow.
Devi novels, and she used to tell me the plots of all of these novels, and they're like fascinating because they're about these the conflicts like of women, basically the women's novels, um, especially of that time. You know, these are the things women are thinking about, societies very gradually changing and then changing very quickly. And what are women facing? And Suchitra Sen was really the face of a lot of these conflicts and a lot of these changes for the post-independence audience, for the post-independence Bengali audience especially, which was maybe a little bit different from the Bombay audience. You know, I think Bengalis always pride themselves on being the gentry and being very educated, well-read, and all of those things, at least a certain class of Bengali audiences. As, you know, you pointed out, there always our films are better, and, you know, we read books and all of those things. But like Suchitra represented that. And then Uttam Kumar represented a refined masculinity, you know, a gentler masculinity. So this man who was a man, you know, he appealed to women, but was gentle and civilized. And then this woman, who was a woman in the way that people conceived of women, then feminine and so on, but also very much her own person, who held herself a certain way, who wasn't wilting. I think that's another thing that you see in that comparison between Nargis in Chori Chori and Suchitra in Chawa Pawa. You know, Nargis is more of a girl. Suchitra is a fully formed woman.
Yeah.
Suchitra has never been a girl on screen.
Right.
No, you know, even in Devdas, she's playing like a teenager, basically, but she has the gait, the carriage, the presentation of a woman. So I think that can also discombobulate an audience who's not like completely steeped in that cinema, but also that's appealing to someone who's looking for men and women, for grown-ups in their cinema, for grown-ups who act awfully sometimes, you know, who are very immature, but they're grown-ups. They're never children. They're never juvenile, you know. And I think that might be the secret of why Uttam and Suchitra are so appealing across these movies, whether it be Agni Pariksha, whether it be Chawa Pawa, whether it be Saptapadi.
Let's talk about Saptapadi, because that's I don't know, when I was first getting into Bengali cinema, that was the film that I had to watch, right? Other than Ray, like that was the everyone insisted that was the one that I watched. And the first time I watched it, you know, the film is it is I don't want to just say it is a lot, but it's
heavy.
It's heavy, it's very dramatic, it's got wartime, it's got alcohol abuse, it's got blackface, it's got Shakespeare, it's got kind of a make under situation, it's got dying parents, it's got some flashback, medical drama. They are in a lot of medical related plots, these two, which I think is pretty interesting. So Pitu, how did it strike you when you were a first time viewer of it? How did it land?
Didn't like it the first half of it, but then I really liked it. And I think the reason I didn't like the first half of it was because her character was such a brat and she was so exhausting to watch. It was just, she was so annoying, which I understand is not her fault. That's the character. I'm not faulting Suchitra Sen for it. It's just her character was so irritating. I was like, what are you always on about? Why are you screaming? Can you take a chill pill? Like I don't know, like take some weed or something. I don't know. So I just found her very annoying, and irritating. Uttam Kumar was adorable. I just thought he was so cute, but I think that's just her character. She came across as very shrieky. But in the second half, I loved it. Overall, though, I didn't care for the movie because that movie has a concept that I personally find very triggering. And remember what we had said, that the word that you hate, Beth, is izzat, and the word that I hate is tyag. So there's a lot of tyag in this movie. And anytime a movie has sacrifice of any kind, it's just very triggering. And I'm just like, no, please. So I think it's a good movie. I think the acting is really good. I'm just not the audience for it, because any plot that has to do with sacrificing anything, it doesn't matter what if you're sacrificing anything, I'm just like, I'm out. So I didn't enjoy it for that reason. I think that's exactly why I liked Agni Pariksha so much, because there was no tyag in it. I mean, there was a very heavy-handed attempts that you should tyag, primarily from the passive-aggressive and also very aggressive grandma. But I loved every time Suchitra pushed back against it. I loved that. That really satiated this need I have as a South Asian person. I wanted to be like, yeah. But with Saptapadi and the constant, I couldn't with the tyag. And there was a fair bit of izzat in it also.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sal, how does that one hold up for you? Or is that a film that you gravitate to particularly?
Wait, first we have to ask Sal what her triggering word is, because Beth's triggering word is izzat and mine is tyag. So what is your triggering word?
God, I'll have to think about it. Maybe wedge sandals? No, I'm kidding. I think plots that are hard for me are usually Taming of the Shrew plots are always really hard.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so horrifying, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so those are always challenging for me. And I think films of that time, of course, especially the 60s, those were a major plot point, Saptapadi is an interesting one for me. Because there's something very Circean about it. It almost feels like a Dr. Cirque film in certain ways. The sensibility of it is so sweeping.
Yes.
It is.
And I can't help but respond to that. It's just, it takes me with it.
Yeah.
I go with it. The ending with they're both looking, and it's the choir, and it's just the shadows, the over their face, and her eyes are all white, and he's got the beard, and it's just, I can't help but respond to it, And I think it was just it's such a seminal film.
Yeah.
The idea, she's playing an Anglo-Indian Christian woman, which was kind of radical in its own way. Lots of choices, lots of filming choices. I mentioned the song, which was really cool. It was a nifty bit of filmmaking for the time. They had it all on the two-wheeler, and that was cool. There was a kind of buoyant feel to the romance, and then you had this kind of epic feel to the rest of it. I always respond to films like that, where it's the fates, star-crossed lovers, lovers sort of cast adrift to the forces of the universe. I can't resist that. And you're right, about her character being this sort of shrieky know-it-all almost. But it's also interesting because she sets a precedent for a lot of these characters that we saw, especially in the early 2000s, the kinds of characters that Rani and
Kajol.
And all.
No one shrieks like Kajol shrieks.
Yeah, but
you have to mute her.
Asserted themselves by being kind of angry. They set boundaries by being a little bit mean. But that was their way of setting boundaries. And this was after a prolonged period of women being, kind of rich brats, or these poor wallflowers waiting to be raped or rescued. So to me, there's something very proto-feminist about Rina Brown. Or maybe just feminist, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's why I can't help responding to her. There's something so straight-backed and plucky about her. That moment of him finding her, drunk and passed out, even that feels radical in the context of cinema in the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah,
The fact that she's not even demonized for it, like here's this
yeah,
terrible person who's drunk, like you're supposed to be heartbroken for her.
yeah, and this idea that like that this film is about so many things, the war efforts and love across cultural lines. I don't even know if you could make that film today, not in Bollywood.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't know. I love my prickly, thorny, brittle, slightly unlikable heroine. That knows this about me. So I like
And-
my heroines.
And
So
no one could have played her other than Suchitra Sen,
Yeah,
right? And there are many Bengali actresses of this era that I also love, but I don't think any of them, could have done this role.
absolutely. Like, a lot of my favorite actresses Bengali actresses have collaborated with Roy, with Ray. Whether it's Sharmila Tagore, whether it's Madhavi Mukherjee, and they are phenomenal actresses. And Suchitra never did.
Right.
I think,
Oh, she's never done any Ray movie?
never done
No.
any Ray movie, which is
Why is that?
wild, because this is the woman touted to be the greatest actress in Bengali cinema, certainly the most well-known, certainly the most iconic, and this is the most iconic filmmaker in Bengali cinema, perhaps the most iconic filmmaker in Indian cinema.
Yeah, for sure.
And they never collaborated. They were supposed to collaborate for a film she went on to make with a different director, Bibi Chodhra, which was based on this kind of epic novel in Bengali. And they didn't, because he had demands of her about her look and about committing sort of bulk dates and things like that, which which might sound familiar if you pay attention to contemporary heroines. This was asked by a similarly iconic director of a similarly temperamental actress about 10 years ago when Ram Leela was being made. She walked out, Kareena Kapoor walked out of his film when similar demands were made of her. But yeah, so that kind of pride is something that comes through in her performances, especially Reena Brown, I think.
Yeah.
That is the Suchitra role. That is the Suchitra performance. That is the Uttam Suchitra film. That's that image of him, the poster.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just chills. I get chills.
And like, how many times will you, once you know that, now that you've seen this film, Pitu, you will see stills of them on that motorcycle everywhere.
Oh, I loved it. I think when I started watching Saptapadi, I took pictures of that and I started WhatsApping you.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Beth was very happy because when I was watching Chawa Pawa, like literally 10 minutes into the movie, I texted Beth, I WhatsApped Beth and I was like, oh, I like this actor so much more than Raj Kapoor. She was so happy. She immediately had to send it to Amrita and she was like, look what Pitu said. Because I'd only seen one Uttam Kumar movie before Chawa Pawa, Saptapadi and Agni Pariksha, and that was Ray's Nayak. And I loved him in that, but that was my only... the only time I'd seen him.
He's I don't have the
lovely.
Words. He's just insanely good, and it really it really is. And I like, not that we have to always do Hindi compared to Bengali or whatever, but since that's the background you and I have anyway. His contemporaries in Hindi cinema, I'm like, oh, I leave them all behind. Like, I would take Uttam Kumar is just
he
so
reminded me
phenomenal.
a lot of Shashi Kapoor, actually. I was like, if someone tells me that they like Shashi Kapoor, I would introduce them to Uttam Kumar and vice versa. Now, having said that, I've seen far more Shashi Kapoor movies than I have his, but I feel like it's that same appeal in a way. As opposed to, oh, you like Jackie Shroff, watch Uttam Kumar. Like, that's not a comparison that works.
The person that I always compare to Uttam Kumar, this might be a comparison that shocks a number of your listeners.
I'm ready.
Who?
Shah Rukh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah, I can see that. The mischief.
Yeah, both of them are very interested in their own career, in their own story, in sort of talking about the narrative of their own career in film, and they have these fruitful sort of long-term associations and collaborations with directors and so on. Of course, both of them are known as these superheroes of romance. They both have legendary pairings with heroines, Shah Rukh with Kajol, with Suchitra. Both of them have the same kind of arrogance. These are both of them have that same kind of sly, keen intelligence that always comes through.
Yes.
Neither of them feels entirely good.
Safe. Yeah.
Shakti always feels good. He's wholesome.
That's true.
He's not entirely wholesome.
No, he's not.
That's why Nayak is such a delicious movie.
Oh,
He's not
so
exactly
good.
a good guy, but he knows it.
Yeah.
With Uttam Kumar, that's always something that comes through. He knows that he's not entirely good. And that's the feeling about Shah Rukh as well. He's so aware about that. And he's always interested in deconstructing the machinery of Shah Rukh Khan, the persona, and Uttam Kumar is similar. And in a way, Suchitra Sen does similar things as a heroine, even though heroines are allowed a far more limited scope to do that, because men run the industry and they're not interested in the mechanics behind how a woman makes herself. But Suchitra had enough clout to get into it to a certain degree, that's what I think makes her narrative, her mythos, so enduringly fascinating.
Yeah. Sal, are there other films of hers that you would like to talk about a little bit?
Aandhi.
Yes, let's talk about Aandhi. I love it.
Yeah, Aandhi has to be talked about. So Aandhi is a tricky one because it does have a bit of that taming of the shrew narrative. It's also tricky because it's, Gulzar has said that it's to some degree autobiographical. It draws from his own marriage with Rakhi, which, and when I hear that, I think poor Rakhi.
Always.
Because if you're a Bollywood lover and if you've grown up, if you speak Urdu or Hindi, you are supposed to have grown up idolizing Gulzar, which I love Gulzar, but at the same time you watch that movie and you're like, that woman must have had a time of it, but yeah, so that film has a little bit of that, but then it has this astuteness about the dynamics in marriage, the dynamics in long-term relationships, how you can love someone and not make it work. And you can continue to love someone and not have made it work. And those things can survive side by side. The cognizance of that love and the cognizance that this was not a thing you could make work. When you're a child, when you're a teenager, when you're a very young person, that is not something you understand. But it's not something I understood when I first watched the movie. I'm like, if they loved each other, they should have made it work. Very literally, Rose should have let Jack onto the floaty thing. It's very that. It has to be a happy ending. It has to work. Otherwise, they need to die together.
It's very dire.
The only end is togetherness, right? As you grow older, you realize that there's ways, for things to be successful, for things to be fulfilling, without having reached a kind of conventional conclusion or completion. And Aandhi is that film that really taps into that. He's made another film, Ijazat, which I know Beth doesn't care for.
I love Ijazat, so you can tell me how much you love it. Good. I adore that movie.
Yeah, I really like Ijazat. That's also because I'm one of those really annoying girls who, when she was like 9 or 10, when I watched that movie, because I had no parental supervision apparently, I watched that movie and the sort of manic pixie dream girl that Anuradha Patel, that's me.
I loved Anuradha Patel in that movie. I'm always so fearful to say that around Beth, but I'm like, yes, I love you. And that song that she has where it's like,
Mera
what
kuch
is that?
saman.
Mera Kuch Saman. I love that song so much, and I'm like, wee.
But yeah, so I think like that like, a thing you grow up with. Like I think like if you've grown up with Gulzar's films, if your parents are like, watch these quality films, with Gulzar's films, you do have an identification with his like sort of refined heroines.
Yeah.
But as you grow up, you also see that this is very much a man's vision of women.
Mm,
You know?
Yes.
And, in Aandhi, Aarti, I think is the character's name, right?
I think so.
She's very much a man's vision, and
Mm.
I suspect that any nuance, any kind of
Depth,
any depth that the character achieves is because of Suchitra's performance.
probably.
Yeah, she's not a shrew. She's not merely a shrew, and she's not just she's not a cold-blooded career woman. She might have been on paper. And she's not just, this remorseful sort of standing for, or this kind of Indira Gandhi manqué, she's not just that. She's this kind of very deeply felt representation of the challenges and the conflicts women have had to face for ages and continue to face. The 70s were a time where in America, the women's rights movement was still young. Women, I think it had just been a few years since women were allowed to open bank accounts independent of their fathers and husbands, right? So to see this film come out, this woman who made this choice, it can't have been, it has to have been revolutionary, because she sticks with that choice, right? You have that idol at his hotel. You have that song, Tere Bina Zindagi Se, where he's telling her that, this is what it looks like during the day. This is what it looks like. This is what the sky looks like. This is what the trees look like. And it's all this beautiful lyrical language. And she says, when am I going to see all of these things? And he says, well, this thing looks lovely at night also. And that to me is at the heart of the movie. We have this much, and let's make something of it. It always takes me back to the end of Now Voyager, which is another sort of women's picture I love.
Oh, yes.
We have the let's not ask for the moon. We have the stars, the last line of the film. It always takes me back to it. And which is why, like, that film, despite the trouble I have with it, despite the quibbles I make, that the heart of it is that of that women's picture, capital W, capital P. And I think the beating heart of it is Suchitra Sen. And I can't seem to get over it. And of course, the film is culturally important because it came out during the emergency. Had to be censored, and there was this one particular song that created controversy because it very pointedly alluded to Indira Gandhi's sort of rule, and all of that stuff. So that stuff is fascinating and deserves reams and reams of writing, which it probably got. But even on its own, it's a fascinating film, like divorced from that political context, which you can't divorce from its political context. It's fascinating. And probably the film that, with the white streak that she has, which is obviously a nod to Madam Gandhi. And all of that. So that's the film, I think, that's the image that one, I think, still has of Suchitra Sen. And one last thing I'll say about that film is she looks so beautiful in that film. Like that might be one of the most magnificent, like, a woman has looked on screen.
Yeah.
I will watch Tere Bina Zindagi Se again and again. Shawl and this white streak and the saris, and she's just so beautiful. And I think she was in her mid-40s by then.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And just like Kate Hepburn, this was a woman who just got more and more beautiful with time. It breaks my heart a little bit that we didn't get to see her age on screen, because I suspect she just got more beautiful as she aged into her 60s and 70s. But then again, one respects that she said, "This is it.
I'm done."
I don't give a damn
Yep.
if, people want to see me, if there's money being thrown at me, I don't care. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to. That's a flex.
Mhm.
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 This is going to sound so trivial probably, but one thing I noticed in all three films that I saw of hers, she is an amazing, amazing lip syncer in songs,
Ooh.
and you really feel like she's singing. I especially marked it in Agni Pariksha. Like she really does look like she's singing. It's almost like you can see her like her throat muscles, and I'm not a singer or anything like that, but like with her throat muscles, the little micro expressions in her face, like I can't really think of anyone else who sings as well on screen as she does. And this may seem like a minor point, but I was just like,
Oh.
I literally was like, who else does this? Does anyone else do this? But it was magnificent. She acted it so well. And I remember I only just recently read Kulam Khula, which is Rishi Kapoor's autobiography. And there's a part in it where he's talking to Ranbir Kapoor, and Ranbir Kapoor apparently said to him that he finds lip syncing to songs really difficult. And Rishi Kapoor said, it's because you're trying to lip sync. He said, what you need to do, you need to sing, like actually sing. So what if you bray like a donkey or your co-star is like horrified by how horrible you sound, but just do it. And that way you'll get those. And I actually was like, is that what she did? Because she really sounds like she's singing. And I was like, that is some world-class acting and lip syncing right there.
Can I just say, if you want to see one of the most charming performances in a song,
Mm.
and this is both of them, you have to watch Dekhne Mein Bhola Hai from Bombay Ka Babu. It is
Okay.
so charming. It's Devanand and her, and she's playing Punjabi, which if you hear the accent in the film, it's delightfully un-Punjabi. It did not sound anything other than Bengali. She's the most Bengali sounding person. She makes Sharmila Tagore sound like Punjabi. She's that Bengali sounding. But her expressions, as you said, her micro expressions, the little coquetry she does, she flirts with the camera.
Yeah.
Things she does. This was a face made for the close-up.
Yeah.
And
It was.
and Devanand is delightful in this because I think a lot of people remember the more lecherous Devanand from later years with the wig and all of that. But this was this was Devanand in his, when they used to say Devanand looks like Gregory Peck, you see it in this. But he was so pretty. He was so pretty in his twink years. And he just plays so beautifully with her. And they're so delightful together. And they're playing, they're really playing. They're like, doing that little merry-go-round dance, and they're like hopping and skipping, and it's delightful. I can't recommend this enough. This is one of the most delightful song and dance sequences in Hindi cinema, I think.
I'll check it out for sure on YouTube. I want to especially focus on like her throat and her like cheeks and her eyebrows, because I was really quite taken by that.
You could watch all of her movies just here,
Right.
and be completely amazed and engrossed, I think. She really, I mean, I forget which of you said micro-expression, but like, it's
really cool.
That's her game. But also macro, right? She does.
Right.
And I don't mean it's too big. I just mean that she's using every tool, I feel like. And I really love it.
Yeah. I found her chemistry with Uttam Kumar so amazing. And it really was like one of the top like hit pairs that I've seen just in terms of their chemistry, especially because they both play so well against each other. Whereas, people always talk about like Raj Kapoor and Nargis's chemistry, and like, yeah, okay, I get it. They had a lot of chemistry, but it always seems like Raj Kapoor is trying to like overshadow her, and he's trying to like steal her thunder, and that always makes me like narrow my eyes and go, what are you doing? But I didn't get that vibe at all. It just seemed like they just enjoyed their chemistry so much, and they have like this twinkle in their eye when they're with each other. You can't help but smile when they're together on screen. And I was like, this is such a good like pairing. And then I had to go and Google. I was like, is Uttam Kumar married? Who did he marry?
That's a drama.
I know, I read about, but also I was so disappointed to hear he passed away so early. I was like, what? So, but I will be watching more films of it. I really want to watch the Sat Pake Bandha, but I can't find it anywhere with subtitles. But I requested Tommy Dan.
I love that film so much.
To put it up for me.
So Dada, so one thing I will say about Shat Pake Badha is that yep, it is a remake of Kora Kaagaz. Kora Kaagaz is a remake of it.
Oh,
I
okay.
can confirm. And this is like a really clear difference between Bengali movies of that time and Hindi movies of that time. The Bengali version has an unhappy ending, spoiler alert, and the Hindi version has a happy ending.
Yeah.
Kora Kaagaz is the one with Jaya Bachchan, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, I've seen it. Okay. But
Yeah.
I don't remember the ending of Kora Kaagaz, so I guess we'll see.
The husband and the wife are reconciled.
Okay.
And in the Bengali version, of course, the villain is the final boss of villains. Your wife's mother, who could be more terrifying. That was the scariest one. The Sasuma is the most terrifying
Right.
in a movie. But yeah, but the end is sad. It ends.
Okay.
But the Hindi version, which is an adaptation of the Bengali version, ends happily. And that I feel like is what, the Bengali purists are always on about.
Right.
Which is I'm blanking on the Hindi remake of Akash Kusum, which also in the Bengali is not a happy ending. And in the Hindi one it is. You're like, oh.
Let me Google it.
And Pitu, I can't wait for you to watch that film because, and she's opposite Sumitra Chatterjee. They don't have very many films together. But she just chews him up and it's glorious. And like, he obviously knows what he's doing as an actor, but like, she is just, and it's fantastic. You will love
Akash Kusum's Hindi version is Manzil.
Oh, of course. Yes.
I have not seen Manzil.
They're really interesting to watch together because they are so very, very similar until they're not.
Okay.
There's a lot of almost like scene by scene,
Which is the movie you said you can't wait for me to watch? Is it Akash Kusum or is it Shat Pake Bandha?
Shat
Pake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, well, hopefully I'll get to see the subtitled version.
It's out there somewhere because I've seen it. And maybe if I have a DVD, I will burn it for you.
Okay.
Because the last time I was in Calcutta, 2 times ago, I went, this is back when there were still like movie stores on Park Street. And Amrita and I marched in there with this like wish list and I bought, like DVDs. They were very confused by me, the 20-something boys running that shop, but I had all my treasures because they were harder to get than Hindi DVDs. Like the shops on Devon Avenue in Chicago they have a few Bengali, as I recall, but not many, and they're just harder to find.
It's harder to find even Bengali movies on 9000 because I would rather watch something on 9000 than YouTube because then I don't have to deal with the annoying ads. I mean, there's nothing that is more frustrating. I mean, I understand why people monetize on YouTube. I get it, but it's so frustrating. It's like you have this amazing scene and Suchitra is like going for it and she's like, and then there's an ad for Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, I do not need this.
So many ads in it. I was starting to rewatch it last night and I was just like ad. But yeah, it is.
Yeah. And they're all like Chick-fil-A or like, it's like talk about being brought to earth.
It's like in a break. It's not at the end of a scene.
No.
And then about like, body potty or something.
Awful. All right. Any other closing thoughts about the great Suchitra Sen before we turn people loose to watch some of her films? Like, do either of you have a recommendation about a starter film? I know, Pitu, you've only seen the 3, but like where do we tell people to start if they haven't seen?
I would definitely tell people to watch Agni Pariksha because I loved it so much and I think it's amazing. And because I loved it so much, I'm not going to try watching Choti Si Mulaqat, even though I adore Vaijayanti Mala because I feel like I'll be no. If you have not seen any Suchitra Sen movies, please watch Agni Pariksha and then talk about how amazing it was with me because I loved it.
And there is a good print on YouTube with English subtitles for free that we will link to, so you can watch that. Sal, where would you tell people to start?
Oh, this is a good one.
Sal is like everything.
I'm gonna go with a couple of classics. I'll say Saptapadi, 2 Saptapadi, just because. Why not?
Yeah, you'll have to eventually, so just do it.
Yeah, you might as well.
If you like me, you'll love it. And if you're not like me and you don't love it, you'll only have me to blame.
Yeah.
Chicago in the winter.
We'll just be like, this is Sal's Twitter. Please direct all criticism to her.
I co-sign that as a good film to watch at least fairly early on because it is so absolutely iconic as a text and you will catch references to it in other places, and it will, and
Hmm.
because it has so much going on in it, right? It's fascinating, even if you don't
It's,
like it.
it's about so much,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
sexy and passionate and infuriating and good. And listen, I'm a Sonam Kapoor fan. There's nothing you can say that I haven't heard. So there's no insult you can direct at me that I haven't heard.
I'm like a goldfish right now. I'm like,
I'm notorious for this on Twitter. But yeah, and Devi Chodrani, if you can get your hands on it, because it's like kind of she plays a bandit in it. Don't you want to watch a film where Suchitra Sen
yes.
plays a bandit?
She does not look like a bandit.
No, she doesn't.
No. I think I'm gonna watch Devdas also because I'm
yeah.
curious, and because Sal has managed to convince me to watch Devdas. Wow, will wonders never cease? Next, Sal will convince me to watch a Sonam Kapoor movie. What is happening?
Yeah, no, I mean, if it helps, if it helps explain my love for Saptapadi, Ranjana is one of my favorite films. Similarly,
Oh.
screwed up and sort of all over the place, messy romance. So I love that sort of thing. So if
Okay.
you like that sort of thing, and you want to watch it with two of the greatest actors of all time, Saptapadi.
Beth,
And
what would you?
Yeah, I mean, I love Chawa Pawa. I mean, they're all, I don't even remember what the first film of hers I saw was. But I just find her so magnetic in absolutely everything that I really don't think anyone could go wrong with almost. I'm sure there's a few stinker films in here somewhere, but I bet she is still great in
Yeah.
them, I'm sure. And if you are a Hindi film watcher and don't, want to go outside of that and you haven't seen Aandhi, then definitely see that. I've only seen it quite recently and was quite blown away by it. But there's just so many things of hers, or you could also watch some of her songs on YouTube, because I agree with Pitu that she is quite lovely. She's really good at songs, and these old Bengali film songs are just, they're so beautiful.
People have to see
so
the song
beautiful.
from Saptapadi on the motorbike.
Okay, we'll
So
put that one
pretty.
in the
I took so
link
many
too.
screen caps. So pretty.
It is pretty. Thank you, Sal, so much for joining us in our fifth installment of Superstars through the years, because like I every time I get to an old film that I haven't heard much about or whatever, I instantly DM Sal and I'm like, you've seen this, right? Like, tell me. Like, we have so many great conversations, some of which we do in public and some of which we don't, but there's just no one like Sal for these fascinating, thought out opinions on Hindi and other cinema. So do follow Sal on Twitter if you don't already. Sal and the Bad Pun. I have never asked what the bad pun
I was
actually
wondering.
is.
All of them.
Okay,
Oh.
good. Yeah, that is an approach to language that I approve of. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you again next time on Filmi
Okay, but
Ladies.
wait, before we leave, we all have to do the Suchitra Sen face. Okay, so one.
Oh, this one?
Yes.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3.
Very good.